Coming to you from the Windy City. Welcome to Let's Talk Shop, a podcast about all things cloud and enterprise tech. Listen to insights and guest interviews with IT thought leaders and professionals. Now, here's your host, Elias Khnaser.
Today, I have someone with me who's more than a guest. He is a friend, someone I've known for a long time. He was one of the first people, actually, that had, back then, all trio of the awards, the vExpert, the Microsoft MVP, and the Citrix CTP. And I'm talking back then, I mean, you could count the people that had those, all three of them on one hand. I was after him. I don't know how much farther after him, but I still remember when I had all three, it was still a small community of folks. He's someone that I used to meet all the time at some of the conferences, specifically at VMworld. It is my great honor today to be chatting with a friend, but also the senior technologist at Nutanix, Ruben Sprout. Now, Ruben, if I mispronounced your last name, please correct me because people do that to me all the time.
No, I'm totally fine. Thanks for having me. It's really a privilege and an honor, and good to see you. It is a while indeed, especially with like no travel or very limited travel. We did hang out together.
It's crazy
in the past, but yeah, it's about time again.
Yes. So speaking of, it's about time again. What are the conferences that you plan on attending this year?
Oh yeah. Actually, next week, although we're like recording live now, but next week I'll travel to Paris to an event called VMworld. And BIM is like in the designing space, AEC, like architect, engineering, construction space. And then after that, I will travel to EUC Masters Retreat in Phoenix, Arizona. Like same week. So from Paris to New York, Phoenix.
Good old days
after the event, it's a couple of days at Corp office. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Nice. What about any plans for VMworld this year, or AWS reInvent, or Microsoft Ignite?
Yeah, both AWS and Ignite is sort of on the radar. Not booked yet. We'll see how that goes. VMworld, no plans yet. We'll see how that will go. Well, I do see. If you look at EUC Masters Retreat and also like E2E VC, these two events are like really focused on end user computing, and that's where my passion is all about. And that is on-prem and public cloud, has components with infrastructure, but focus is EUC, and like events like Masters Retreat and E2E VC is different. It's a smaller group. It's more like close to each other, more discussion. Different type of discussions, and different type of event. Yeah,
nice. Yeah. So, if nothing, we'll probably see each other then at reInvent in Vegas. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Speaking of EUC, one of my favorite things that you used to do many moons ago was the VDI Smackdown.
Oh yeah. I know.
What happened to that?
Yeah, Smackdown was a thing. I had. Was it 5 or 6? But no, doesn't matter. 5 like Smackdowns. A Smackdown is like a battle between opponents, right? And back in the days, we had VDI Smackdown and UEM Smackdown and EMM Smackdown and 3D Graphics Smackdown, top of my head. So yeah, these documents, big white papers, became books. And yeah, when I would say left the partner space, I worked 12 and a half years for a large system integrator. I joined Atlantis, and after Atlantis, I joined Frame. Frame got acquired by Nutanix, and well, here I am. Like, if you have the badge, hey, you work for a vendor, then it's tougher. I wouldn't say not impossible or impossible, but it's tougher to create content which is like unbiased. And that's the main reason for me. The main reason why I stopped creating these type of documents. So imagine I compare Frame with Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Amazon. That doesn't work. So yeah, that's the main.
And reason. No one picked it up, huh? No one in the community reached out and said, "Hey, I'd like to."
To some degree, some of them, like AppVert Smackdown, was the fifth one. We had a team of people who were actively working on that. But over time, I don't know why, but over time that slowly sort of stopped, I would say.
Well, to all the EUC experts out there that are hearing us, someone needs to pick up this research and continue it. If you haven't seen the Smackdowns, where can they still get them, by the way? Can they still download them?
Think so. You can get them from like just send me an email. I'm happy to share, but I don't think they are online. No, maybe no, I don't think so. Because my former employer PKR, they probably have a couple of new websites built, and pretty sure they removed the papers. Yeah.
For those that haven't seen the Smackdowns, I mean, those things were awesome. I mean,
and also it is also good to mention that it really was a team effort, and is a team effort, right? It's like different people, sometimes 6-7 people working on that content for months, and different people, different roles. Some of them are really like into the trenches and investigating and writing things down and asking questions, which I then picked up and communicated back to the vendors. Different people, different roles. It was really a team effort, and that's what I also like in our community today. Although Smackdowns are not there anymore, there are still a lot of community efforts happening, and often it's good to hang out physically, but also like work together, creating events or sharing knowledge internally and externally. So community is still like very close to my heart, and no Smackdowns, but we'll see in the future what happens.
In the future, right? It's funny. So when I was at Gartner, we did what were called scorecards, and those always reminded me of the Smackdown, because they were very similar. It was also a group effort. It was a little different. We published the criteria first, and then we scored them against the criteria. But you could appreciate the amount of time that went into.
There's quite some overlap. Like I remember the days with Chris Wolf and also yourself later, and Gartner to some degree. Yeah, like different like people on the Gartner or GTP side of things. Although the Smackdown didn't have a scoring mechanism, there was still a lot of knowledge packed into that paper, which was being used like big time. Like tens of thousands of people downloaded the Smackdowns over the years. So good stuff.
So those were the days. But you're still the expert, and because you're still the expert, give me the state of VDI, of EUC. Who are the main players? Who is in the lead? Give me the state. Where are we today in 2022?
Yeah, it's a good simple, like a good single question, I would say, but there is like many angles to answer that question. So when you look at virtual applications and desktops as sort of an umbrella term, you could say, that umbrella term is part of larger EUC. So EUC is a large like umbrella, and virtual applications and desktops are part of that like umbrella term. And then under the virtual apps and desktops term, you can differentiate between VDI and DaaS, virtual desktop infrastructure and desktop as a service. Now, VDI and DaaS can also mean different things to different people, but I will give you sort of my view on that in this context. So in this context, VDI is software and people with skills to design and to implement and maintain and support and upgrade that platform, that broker. And that broker is responsible for delivering apps and desktops to you and me, to us, to end users. Now, in a DaaS context, there is no software you can download and install and configure yourself. That's the service you consume, and different vendors in that space. So that's like important to understand. And there are different use cases for the VDI context and for the DaaS context. Now, some people might say, well, VDI is different because VDI is all about a single user OS. True, that's why I mentioned VDI can mean different things to different people. But in the VDI context, I just pointed out is you can have single user and multi-user operating systems, because the control plane, the broker, is still software you control, you run, and you run in your organization or multiple organizations. So what the state is that people and organizations are transforming from or transitioning from software to service, and that's not rocket science. That's like, look at this platform we use right now. In the past, we had huge TV studios, and right now it's just a browser, and you run the SaaS application in your browser. That's what this TV studio is all about, right? So from software to service, you see the same with telephony. You see the same with messaging. Look at Office 365 and Google Apps. And the same is happening with VDI to DaaS, with software to service. So that's, I would say, one of the big items happening right now. And there are multiple vendors in that, call it DaaS and also VDI space. Of course, historically, VDI is like old Microsoft and Citrix, and then I would say VMware entered that space. Sean Bass, great guy, close friend as well. I would say he entered VMware. I'm smiling about it, but there's also like some truth in that. Like he entered VMware, and then like if you look at VMware EUC, it really like skyrocketed in a very positive way, and that's, I would say, where it is today. VMware and Citrix are really battling in the, like, call it VDI space, in the traditional on-prem space. I do have a lot of good friends working at Citrix, and if you look at my resume, I'm very close to Citrix on many sides. So yeah, I'm really hopeful that they sort of get their mojo back. Right now, it's tougher, in my impression. Get their mojo back and make huge steps forward. And because like competition is healthy in the VDI space between Citrix and VMware. And if you look at the DaaS space, desktop as a service space, where the control plane is a service, you have Amazon with Workspaces and Amazon with AppStream. You have Microsoft with Azure Virtual Desktop, AVD. You have Citrix, of course, with Citrix Cloud, or CVAD-S, Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services. You have Horizon Cloud with different flavors. You have Frame. So different vendors in that particular space, and each vendor has a different background. Frame, like my company started as a service like 8 years ago, while some other companies started maybe, I don't know, 30 years ago with a huge backpack of features and functions and options with a lot of benefits, but can also be a challenge. Like if you just look for a simple yet very powerful solution, why do I need a backpack full of options and features? So different vendors, different starting point in that time.
Ruben, your company was Mainframe 2 and then got renamed Frame, correct? Or am I?
No, you did your due diligence well. Not so many people know.
I still remember the first demo I saw of it. It was pretty impressive. It was the first time we saw, a powerful protocol inside of a browser.
Yep. Yeah. Like Mainframe 2 was the first when the company started, was the official name, and then people thought, well, Mainframe 2, that sounds legacy. Well, it is running legacy apps in your browser. We talk about Windows apps in this context. Yeah. Some people call it legacy. I call it classic, since there are still many, like millions of apps on the planet and being used on a daily basis to get work done. Yeah, Windows apps are an instrumental part of the modern workspace. But yeah, Mainframe 2 then became Frame, and Frame became Nutanix Frame. That's how it is. Yeah.
So you talked about VDI and the movement to DaaS.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I checked, the majority were still on VDI, and the migration was happening but slow. Two questions. Where would you put the percentages today? Are the majority still on VDI? Has the majority shifted to DaaS? And do we have feature parity between DaaS and VDI for all use cases?
Yeah. Let's see. Like the numbers, I don't have. Like if you ask numbers to a technologist, I would like to have like data and prove that data.
No, give me your best guess estimate.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
hold. If it's the best guess, I would say the majority is still like on-prem. So VDI, let's call like that, and is like transitioning to cloud. That's what I do see happening on a daily basis, and also if you look at Gartner data, that's also where the trend data is heading to, and that's also where the growth is. Like VDI is flatlining, and like the curve is like getting down,
declining.
While like DaaS is like picking up, and like 2023, 2024 is like majority is DaaS. That still can mean like that's a good thing to highlight. There is when we talk about DaaS, many people think that the workload machines, the VMs to run apps and desktops, are also in public cloud. Well, that could be the case, but can also be like different. Can also run in an on-premises environment, right? So it depends if the DaaS vendor, if the control plane is like multi-cloud, hybrid multi-cloud, or not. So that's what I see happening. People are often tired for like, hey, I don't want to run this. I don't want to run the software. I don't want to maintain the platform. I just want to consume it, like we just discussed. That's what I do see happening. I do see large deployments in DaaS context, moving away from VDI to DaaS, but also see complete new use cases where virtual apps and desktops was not being used at all, and just bump straight into as a service, desktop as a service. Maybe a small use case, small amount of people, or large amount of people with a handful of applications. I do see that happening as well. And in my opinion, that's also one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why Microsoft is entering and has entered this space with two different type of solutions, like Windows 365 and an Azure Virtual Desktop.
Do you think COVID accelerated the move to DaaS? It
Big
did,
time.
right?
Yeah, big time. Yeah. That's like, I cannot share Nutanix numbers, but I've seen like a huge spike in not only infrastructure, because Nutanix is like two things, right? Nutanix is like the infrastructure to run, for instance, Citrix and VMware or Frame, but also with the acquisition of Frame almost 4 years ago, like providing like a true desktop as a service platform. And yeah, both sides, both on the infrastructure and on the like desktop as a service side, we did see a huge uptake. And that's like, of course, many people figured out, hey, what is the new normal, and how should I support my colleagues and coworkers and my contractors remote? So the spike is normalized, I would say. But yeah, it's an important and also like from a BCDR, like business continuity and disaster recovery point of view, I do see DaaS with workload machines on-prem and also workload machines in public cloud as an great solution in the whole BCDR conversation, I would say. If you see the second question you had about features,
that's where I was going to go next. Like a GPU workload, for example, will that work when it does?
Oh yeah, for sure, big time. Yeah, like on the Frame side, we started with mainframe. When you saw Frame in the earlier days, we did run Photoshop in a browser and still do. So GPUs are part of that. But when you ask a question about features, I didn't thought about the GPU component per se, because that for me is like, check, standard. I thought more about, what other features are sort of part of the conversation? Remote and protocol features, security-specific features, like image management, capacity management, all these type of features. How does VDI compare to DaaS? And on one side, they compare like straight. And on the other side, there is a difference, because the use case can be different as well. For instance, if you run workload machines in public cloud, you need to be sure that capacity management, which means increase or decrease capacity based on demand, is part of the service. In a VDI context, that is less important, because you're already run on-prem. You already have the equipment there, and capacity management is part of the solution, but maybe less important. And the same maybe applies for multi-tenancy. So there are different angles to look at features and compare them between VDI and DaaS. But from a user experience perspective, I would start with that. You can create a similar, or sometimes even better user experience using DaaS compared to VDI. And also the other way around, there are use cases where DaaS will not meet the requirements. If for whatever reason, since a control plane is a cloud service, for whatever reason you're not able to use that service, you don't have interconnectivity, or from a legal or regulation perspective, you're not able to do so, then the whole DaaS conversation will stop, and like the VDI conversation will continue. So different angles. Start with why. What is the idea? What's the challenge you have? And then understand what it, from a functional and technical perspective, means, and then discuss, hey, does it make sense to run these apps just local on your machine? Because the biggest competitor is not VDI or DaaS, or Amazon versus Microsoft, or Citrix versus VMware, or VMware versus Frame, or whatever the vendor combination is. No, the biggest competitor is the PC itself in the context of virtual apps and desktops. And then, yes, you see the value of VDI and DaaS, then understand the difference between VDI and DaaS, and then drive deeper into the vendors and the features. And don't start with the Smackdown of features. Although I've seen that, I can tell a small story about that if time permits.
Yeah, go for it.
In the days of VDI Smackdown, I had a large, I would say, prospect, not a customer at that point in time, who contacted me and said, hey, you're in the consulting business. Can you help me with making decisions? Because, well, you're sort of the expert. I wouldn't call it myself, but they said, hey, you're the expert. Come over and help us. So I did, as part of a consulting gig, part of the vendor, the partner I work for. And they said, well, yeah, great story, but 10 minutes in, should we choose Citrix or should we choose VMware? And do you know what I did? Probably not. I'm sure I didn't share that story widely. So I put my wallet and used a €2 coin, which was like a bigger coin, and flipped the coin. It will be Citrix today. They're like, this cannot be true. And then I explained, without context, you cannot make decisions. And I said, hey, paint the context. And then they start painting, and that took like an hour and a half. And that helped. That was like the starting point of a real conversation. So just reading the document and making a conclusion out of that. And that also applies to performance testing. I've done a lot of performance testing with a lot of teammates, and without context, numbers doesn't say a thing.
Doesn't say much. Yeah, no. It's funny when I used to get asked very similar questions, AWS or Azure, and I'm like, it depends. They're both pretty good. What do you give me more context to your point? So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Speaking of AWS and Azure, if we're saying the trend is moving in DaaS's favor over the long run, do you feel like AWS and Azure in particular, so Workspaces and the Microsoft offerings, will consolidate that space? Like, will it get to a point, do you think, where the need for a VMware or Citrix and all of the extended bells and whistles and advanced feature capabilities will be like harder to justify, and maybe the core AWS and Azure services will be good enough? Are we headed in that direction?
Tough to say. I don't think so, because if you look at history, sometimes smaller, more focused companies add their value. Or not sometimes, they add their value, and that's their strength, and they're more nimble to help. But if you look at for sure, the platform is there. Platform is attached to larger use cases. So for sure, that is true. But that also means there is it's a huge market, and the biggest competitor is the PC, as I mentioned earlier. So there's also a huge opportunity for many vendors in this space, including Citrix and VMware and Nutanix and so on. The key question is, how do you differentiate? And that can be on support level, can be on technology level, can be on a sales level. How do you add value to their ecosystem? It can be I add specific functions for capacity management or image management, or a much better protocol for browser support, or a hybrid cloud support. There can be many angles to differentiate, right? And that is the goal of the ecosystem around the Microsoft and the Amazon. Hey, how can we differentiate? That's the fun part of it as well. How can we be different than Windows 365 or AVD or Workspaces? And that helps. And that works as well.
What about the protocol wars? Are the protocol wars still a thing? HDX versus Frame versus, are those still a thing, or has it moved more towards the features of the platform as a whole?
Yeah, both. That they're still a thing. You might say on one side, it's not a thing because, if I have a broadband connection and 10 millisecond latency to the closest data center, what's the conversation about wide area network? True. That's on one side. You don't care the value of DaaS in public cloud. Or one of the values is that you can use the regions closer to where the end users are, and they need to worry about the data part of the conversation, which is also challenging. But on that side, the protocol wars are, I would say, I wouldn't say there are no bad protocols per se. If you look at the context, if you look at Citrix and Microsoft and VMware and Amazon and Frame, but there are huge differences in the angle vendors take, and also feature richness of the remote protocol. So it depends on context if the protocol war is really a war, or everyone is on the same side of the conversation. It depends, but I see on a daily basis that there are huge differences in remote protocols. Not every remote protocol is equal, and you cannot say for instance, RDP will serve all the needs. That's not fair either. So protocol wars still happening.
Still happening.
And also with GPUs.
It's still a main decision factor.
Sorry?
It's still a main decision criteria.
It is it is exactly.
Okay.
Because it impacts directly like end user experience, for sure. So if, for instance, you have issues with webcam because the protocol doesn't offload it correctly, then that might impact the decision to go for vendor A or like in favor of vendor B. And that is what I do see on an, I would say, daily basis.
All right. So let me ask you a little bit about architecture. So if most customers today probably have an on-premises environment and have at least one, I would say probably two cloud providers, either AWS Azure, AWS Google, Azure Google, some mix of that. So for customers that want to run VDI and a mixture of DaaS, how would they do it? Like, before we even get to multi-cloud, we can talk about that. But if I have VDI and I want to introduce DaaS from AWS, let's say, or AWS and Azure, is there something that would control all of them, or is it still very siloed?
I would say it's more siloed. Like, imagine you use Citrix on-prem, which historically is like many customers do today, or even like VMware on-prem, doesn't matter for the conversation. And then if you go to like AWS Workspaces, I would say these are two like complete separate environments. The only thing which is sort of common is the data conversation. Hey, where's my data? What kind of backend service do you have? That's like sort of a common layer. But the access layer itself is like two separate angles. And also like managing these platforms is completely separate. So that's, that I would say from an architectural perspective, I'm not sure if that's the right approach. Like, maybe temporary to go from A to B, assuming that VDI will disappear and like merge into like full, call it DaaS with Amazon Workspaces in this example. But if that's like the end goal, it could be, but I'd rather go for a vendor where you can run workload machines on-prem and in public cloud and manage it the same people with the same skills, licensing is the same, like these type of things, which is what I would do, assuming that like hybrid on-prem and public cloud is the start.
Well, let's go to that. Mm-hmm. Let's go to that. So whether it's Citrix or VMware or Frame, and I want to run it basically on multiple clouds and potentially on-prem, is that possible?
Yes. Yeah. That's it is possible today, but there are always caveats in just yes, right? Like the data conversation I just brought up is like a huge one. Hey, where's my data, and how do I make sure that if I use on-prem today and public cloud tomorrow, and then the day after on-prem again for whatever reason, how do I access my user profiles? How do I access my databases? How do I make sure that data is in sync if that is part of the solution? That part is the toughest conversation.
And is it a matter of synchronizing the data, or is it a matter of centralizing the data and giving
both, depending on what the backend is? Like you have, like if you look at a simple example, if you look at OneDrive, it will just synchronize. And if I have access to OneDrive through on-prem VDI, totally fine. And if I 2 hours later launch my app and that app connects with OneDrive in public cloud, totally fine. But what if it's a database which doesn't support any replication? Or what if it's a large file share and I open a large Revit file and there's a file lock on that file? Things like that, it makes it more complex. And probably it's all three. You have like cloud storage solutions like Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. You have databases with like smart replication technology. You have file servers with no replication, like whatever. Like it's always a combination of things, and that makes it more complex, if you ask me. And that's independent if it's Citrix or Microsoft VMware or Frame. Doesn't matter for the conversation.
Are customers doing multi-cloud with VDI and DaaS?
Yes.
Is that a popular thing?
Yep. I see two multiple angles. One of them is like, hey, we have our data on-prem, and we have for instance students who wanna we have certain a baseline, and if we need more capacity, we just use data and desktops out of the cloud. I do see that. I see similar conversation with BCDR and similar implementations with business continuity as well. So that's where I do see it. Or the other way around, like, hey, we have on-prem as the main platform, and that's not going away like fast, but slowly we will decline, and in the same time we increase the usage in public cloud and leverage multiple regions, leverage pay as you go, leverage like innovation in public cloud. Different reasons to do like multi hybrid cloud. I do see that in the field.
Yeah. Are deployments more and more using spot instances from AWS, Azure, Google, or is it more stateful deployments usually?
Yeah, I would say 80%. And there's data. I run another community project called VDI like a Pro together with Mark and Christian. We ask questions, survey questions, and one of the questions is like, hey, what's the ratio of stateless, stateful? Last year, we did run a survey, 1,600 people filled in the survey. And top of my head, I would say like 70% of the audience is running virtual apps and desktops in like non-persistent, stateless setup. And like 25 or 30% of them is like persistent desktop. That's the ratio last year. I don't have the exact number. I could check it out, but like that's roughly the ratio I know top of my head. So majority is non-persistent.
Wow.
And so mainly for manageability, I would say. Manageability is like the main one to use.
So they're able to take advantage of spot instances then to reduce the price.
Yeah. I'm not sure if spot will be the right one, but yeah, for sure. You can just power off the machines when they're not being consumed. What you don't want is that AWS will turn off, or Google or like Microsoft, doesn't matter for the conversation, that they will turn off these machines, power off these machines because you didn't pay enough for it or whatever it is.
Correct. So
that's the challenge with these type of workloads, and doesn't apply to containers or web servers, because the load balancer will handle it. In the like EUC end user computing side of things, that doesn't work, because if someone powers off the machine, I might lose work, actual work. So you need to be clear on what type of like machines are being used, and also what kind of subscription is configured for that. Yeah.
So what's new? Tell me about what's coming. What's new with Nutanix, with the industry in general? Give me some thoughts on where you think things are going. Maybe some cool features, some cool things that in your mind we're going to see soon.
Yeah, good question. One of the items I do see is sort of a blend and integration of like call it modern communication, collaboration, and like classic, call it legacy, doesn't matter, legacy application like delivery. So imagine you're working in a virtual environment, not virtual like virtual apps and desktops, but like you have your headset on. Some people call it metaverse, doesn't matter you want to call it. But imagine that space, and we communicate like that in that space. That sounds a little bit fuzzy, but if you look at vendors like Spatial IO and Glue, check them out. I did spend quite some time with Glue, and it really is engaging to collaborate like we do right now in that virtual environment. But imagine that virtual environment also contains the ability to access apps and desktops, but often apps. Yeah, that's where I do see an integration of these two worlds together. I've already done a couple of projects in that context. So that's maybe not for everyone, not for everyone right now, but an interesting thought process. Okay, what if collaboration, besides this type of collaboration and Zoom and Teams, and besides in-person meetings, and all like both are important. What if you have a third option call it metaverse? With VR and Glue as an example, and then you add your apps and you just consume these apps, or I use some apps and I present these apps in that virtual environment, that virtual Glue environment to you. That's one angle where I see things happening.
So traditional Windows apps in the metaverse.
Yes.
Yeah. I like it. I think
it works really well. Maybe we should do another or just like not a recording, but like a conversation in that. I am more than happy to invite you to a Glue workspace where you can see Glue, and Glue is the example here. Like Facebook has solutions and Spatial IO, and there are others as well. But I did spend quite some time on Glue.
Yeah, let's definitely do it. I'd love to do it. Yeah,
Glue.work is the platform. But
cool.
Yep. And bring them together. You will be like astonished and flabbergasted by how that looks like and feels. Really,
nice.
Really engaging. Yeah, it is. That's one angle. One other angle is, I would say, what is really new is, I'm not sure if it's really new, but it's important for our industry, is the ability to use slices of Nvidia GPU on the infrastructure side. And Azure is the first one to make that happen. It's not there yet. It's in preview, and it step by step will happen. And the value is that you will have like a slice of a powerful GPU, and also the slice of the price of a powerful GPU. So the impact of pricing is important there. And that's helpful to drive costs down and match these type of machines with the use case. It's great to have a super powerful NVIDIA A10 GPU on my VM. But if I don't use that VM all the time, like, why not share that VM on a hardware level? And that's where like one of the developments is happening. That's already done and common in the on-prem space with NVIDIA vGPU. Sure. In public cloud, it's not. Only Ali Cloud today has NVIDIA vGPU, and both Google and AWS and Azure today don't have like vGPU as like general available. You could say. So that's a good thing. It's more options, and it's like good to have that type of battle between cloud providers as well. Sometimes AWS is in one step ahead of Azure. Then I would say that's 2 weeks later, it's the other way around. Competition. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, exactly.
So real quick on that NVIDIA, though, I'm curious now. So you're not getting a full-blown GPU. You're getting a slice of the physical GPU that's virtualized for you, correct?
Yeah, it's not there yet, but that's okay. Since you asked, hey, what is on the horizon? That's what's one of the items on the horizon. Yeah, you get a slice and hardware based on hardware like virtual function. You get a slice of that GPU. And yeah, that's, I would say, in the making. I did spend some time with that already, and it works well. It's good stuff. You might say, well, that's not new, because AMD in Azure also has that technology, which is correct. That's why I mentioned NVIDIA vGPU. Right. But the AMD GPUs today are a little bit dated, I would say. So it's about time that newer AMD GPUs will enter the data center space, including like MX GPU, so virtual function slicing of these AMD GPUs. On the, I would say, AWS side, I don't see that yet. For sure, it will come. There are AMD GPUs and like a plethora of Nvidia GPUs on the AWS and also Google side of things. So on the AWS side, on the AWS side, the AMD GPU is brand or a newer GPU, but still a pass-through or a one-to-one mapping between GPU and VM, not a slicing of GPU. So yeah, I think it's great to have options also on the infrastructure side of things, and that will help vendors like ours. It will help customers and partners to choose from.
Very cool.
Yep.
So you mentioned NVIDIA slicing. You mentioned the metaverse.
Yep.
Anything else before I shoot my favorite last question at you?
Shoot it.
So you brought up the metaverse. You brought this onto yourself, Ruben. So I have to ask, how many NFTs has Ruben purchased to date?
I cannot describe that. 0 is the
That's
answer.
what I thought. That's what I thought. None.
I'm also like I have also feet on the ground. So for me, that part is still a little bit fuzzy. Although I do see also value in that. If you look at like games, like I have 3 kids, 3 young adults, 21, 19, 15. I would say kids. That's not a good thing, but young adults. They play a lot of online games. Imagine they play, like one of my kids play Call of Duty, and you can buy your adventures like armor or your gearbox in like with adventure branding, and you pay $50 for it because no one else had it. That's
Avengers meets Call of Duty. I like it.
Whatever, why not, right? So I can see the value in that. Is that something for me right now? Not, but maybe 2-3 years it's different.
Yeah.
Maybe in 3 years, I just make up an example. Maybe in 3 years I can buy something cool through the Zoom or Teams like in store and have like special glasses no one else had, and I paid $50 for it.
The Ruben glasses.
Yeah, why not? So
Yeah, especially with Metaverse. I agree. Metaverse will have some good enterprise application, I think.
yeah.
And as a result, there might be some NFT there. I also think NFTs are a generational gap. So for your kids, for my nephews, to them, it's a lot easier to understand it or buy it than it is for us to do that.
Or not, maybe not only easier, but also like willing to spend like real money on it.
Yeah.
A similar story. Like I wouldn't buy like a pair of shoes of like 1,400 euros or something like that. I'll buy a nice pair of shoes because I like them and they're comfortable for like maybe 200 euros or 300 euros, but not to the extreme, just to like make a statement to the outside world. That's not how I am.
Yeah.
Who I am. So yeah, everyone is different for sure, and that's a good thing.
Ruben, the conversation with you is exciting and fun as always. Thank you so much for making time. We're gonna definitely do this again with a demo next time. I'm gonna check out those companies you mentioned, and maybe we could do this again with a demo. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds good.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
See you. Bye.